And we are running this as a GoToWebinar, which typically we don't open up the mics, but we're going to open up the mics to everybody next. And if you want to speak up and say anything, you'll be able to do that. Let's see.
Muted. Unmuted.
Okay. So good morning, everybody. Young, are you there? Good morning. This is Kimon Onuma. Hello, can you hear me? Yeah, and if you're not speaking, if you can mute yourself on your side, so we can keep the noise level down. So just there's a control on the GoToWebinar, GoToMeeting at the top that says mute. So we're hearing some background noise. If we hear background noise, we're gonna try and mute you from our side too. But if you can mute yourself, I'd appreciate it. So good morning. We're going to try and keep this morning's session to an hour. This was a last-minute decision for us to jump into the AEC Hackathon. And we're hearing some background noise. If you can mute yourself if you're not speaking, please. Okay, great. Thank you. So we have this hackathon that's going to be happening starting tomorrow, actually. And from our side, we've been in discussions with the hackathon teams to actually participate, and we decided last week, or even earlier this week, actually, definitively to jump in. So it was a last-minute decision. We've obviously, some of you have been involved with BIMStorms before, so we're very used to kind of on the fly jumping into sessions like this. But this usually we do a lot more prep. This one's kind of more of an ad hoc, but there's quite a bit of material, and it's exciting for a couple of reasons. One, if you haven't participated in the webinar we had earlier this week for the SEPs to BIM, we had a lot of interest there. We're getting some background noise still from somebody. If you can mute your mic, I'd appreciate it. And I'll just do an intro, then we'll kind of go around and see who's logged in soon here. But so we on the SEPs to BIM webinar earlier this week, we had over 360 people registered, and most of them actually showed up. There was actually close to 300, I believe, that actually showed up. And then after that, there was actually even more interest. We're getting a lot of emails and questions, not only from the government owners of VA and DoD that are involved with SEPs, but even other government agencies and private organizations as well. So there could be a lot of eyeballs on this. There's a lot of interest on the outcome of this, specifically from the healthcare owners that we've been working with. And one thing I want to make clear that although Onuma has been working with VA and DoD on several contracts over the years, this event is not part of an official task or a request from the government. This is outside of our contract scope. We decided to do this on our own and just invite anybody that wants to participate to jump in. So to start off, maybe it would be good to, let's see, just maybe we probably don't have time to go around there and introduce everybody, but I could kind of read off the names and see groups of people that are here that have signed up. I don't know if you've actually logged in yet or not, but I see some of you that have logged in. Yes, so we have Aditas, Design Atlantic, Atania, Balfour Beatty, Building Catalyst, Gilbane, HDR, HFR, Istanbul University, Jacobs, MAD, NC National Capital Planning Commission, Onuma, Scarmack Architecture, SketchUp, Stryker, TD Rossi, Innova, and that's it for now. And we expect more to jump in as well. If I missed anybody, please put in the chat box and we'll let you type in your name there, where you're from. Oh, Mike Bordenaro is here as well. So today's webinar, we want to give you an overview of how this is going to be structured, the 3 days. The hackathon is running from Friday to Sunday. It's going to be at UCLA. Ryan Gear from SketchUp and myself, Kimon Onuma, will be on site. If anybody else is in the area and wants to be at UCLA, you're welcome to attend. you do have to register separately. If you're not going to be virtually online, if you're going to physically attend at UCLA, you do have to register on the hackathon site, and there's actually a fee for attending for the food and things that they're going to have there. So there's a fee associated with being physically there, but they've allowed us, the BIMStorm team, to have virtual teams without paying a fee. So essentially, if you're logged in with BIMStorm and part of the BIMStorm team, you do not have to register on the hackathon site. And so this is the website. If you go to seps2bim.org and click on the events, we are going to keep this updated with new information. Starting tomorrow, the hackathon starts in the evening at UCLA. There are other teams that are going to be attending, and the intent is to have a quick introduction of all the teams, basically a pitch. So we're going to stand up and say we're the BIMStorm Healthcare team. We have this group of participants on our team, and we'll read off. We'll point to the list. I don't think we'll have time to read it because we basically have a minute to make a pitch to the other teams. And what we're looking for there is for other teams that want to participate and link to what we're doing. And that's basically what the hackathon's about, is how can you make connections to other solutions that are out there and even create new applications with the data that's going to be made available from the hackathon. So there are going to be two tracks for it. So the BIMStorm is one team essentially inside the hackathon. There's going to be other teams in the hackathon. We don't have their names yet, but we've broadcast out that we're there. In fact, if you go to the hackathon site, they've added us down at the bottom as a link. So there's a link to the hackathon site. So this is a hackathon site, SoCal Hackathon. There's a fee if you want to be there physically. And then at the very bottom, and there's sponsors and other things going on there. And at the very bottom, it shows where the location is and the schedule. This is important too. We're actually going to be following the schedule. So Friday, the hackathon kickoff is at 7:30. We're going to be announcing what we're doing. On Saturday morning, Ryan Gear from SketchUp and myself are going to be doing an actual presentation. They actually asked us to do a presentation separate. It's going to be at the hackathon, basically presenting what's going on. So we have, I think, 45 minutes or something to do a presentation. And the teams are going to start working, basically. Even there's already activity going on this week before the hackathon. So there's this actual event that's happening from Friday to Sunday, and it finishes basically at 1 o'clock on Sunday. But there's preparation that has been happening on our side, and our intent from the BIMStorm Healthcare, the SEPS2BIM side, is that we're going to continue this. So this is kind of a milestone of completing the hackathon, but the results of the hackathon and the teams, if you want to continue with the testing and the development that happens after it, we're going to still keep the BIMStorm running after that. So that's the hackathon site. So let's see. So there's going to be two tracks. This is important for the BIMStorm teams. There's going to be the designers track and a developers track. And the reason we set this up like this, software developers here on this site, software developers and vendors, and designers, we're kind of using it as an all-encompassing term. It's going to include architects, engineers, owners, healthcare owners, equipment planners, and others that are involved in kind of the decision of how do you put together a healthcare facility and manage facilities. And the developer side are programmers that have software applications, or they're going to develop applications, solutions that can link to the work that's happening on the design side. So the idea is, as the design progresses, data is going to be updated, and the programmers will have live access to the data. And we've already set this up. This is already what's called a RESTful web service. So in other words, as BIM is being edited and changed, the design teams that have applications that can read from that data can create solutions. So they can actually start building solutions even today. The links are already there, but as the hackathon progresses,
Muted.
we'll actually be able to see the changes happening, and the development teams will have access to that. So the challenge is basically to hack the healthcare data. And the healthcare data, the significant part of this is that the SEPS data, the Space and Equipment Planning System data that's available, is the actual requirement data coming from the Space and Equipment Planning System that's on the max.gov website. In other words, it's the VA and DoD requirement data, their actual data. Let's see. So we have a little description here that you can read. We would like you on, there's steps listed here on the side of what each team needs to do to participate. We know that you signed up for today's webinar, so we realize you're out there and we have the names and everything, but we would really like you to actually go through step one and sign up on the form so we get you officially on the list. There's actually a form that opens up that's you put in your name and everything, so please go ahead and do step one. Step two, basically, we want you to decide your track, and you could actually be involved with both of them. There's a designer's track and a developer's track, like I mentioned, and there are some teams that are going to be doing both. And for your information, the Onuma team, the BIMStorm Onuma team, is going to be helping facilitate and make the connections between the different teams in BIMStorm. So we're going to be encouraging different teams to do certain things because we know your capabilities. But it's not limited to whatever we suggest. We really want to leave it wide open. And if you have any ideas, we would like to hear that from you and see the results. The other thing is, because this is last minute and we want to respect everybody's time, obviously we're not going to be all physically in the room together. So as much as possible, we're going to try and do this asynchronously. That if, for example, at the start tomorrow, we would release a program requirement for a project that comes from SEPS that says, here's a new clinic. We would have a link to it. And then if you're on a design team, say an architect or engineer that wants to use that data to work on a project, you would be able to take that and even take it offline and then submit it back as you're making progress on the project. Submit it back to us or to the server that we're using. We're using the Onuma system as one of the servers that's going to host the data. And then then by doing that, then the development teams will actually be able to see the changes. That's the intent of this workflow. Now, you're welcome to stay online as much as you want and be involved as much as you want, but we also want to respect your time. And even if you can do just a little bit, that would be great to be able to show the workflow. On the designer's side, we want to really encourage designers and architects and other planners to get involved, even if they don't know how to use BIM, for that matter. We're even making that a big point. It doesn't matter. We really want your knowledge about how to put a healthcare facility together and have the domain knowledge of that. And we actually started that on the webinar on Tuesday this week. We said, okay, even if you submit, and we've broken it up into part A, B, C, D. So part A, for example, create a live BIM from SEPS. On the SEPS to BIM site, there's a space and equipment. There are these tools already that exist here that you can actually request a certain type of space or department. And that's really a few minute exercise that you log in. And I won't go through this whole thing, but basically you log in and you type in the room name, an exam room, and you proceed. And that essentially gives you a BIM from that that generates a space and actually can show you the floor plan. You can export it to Revit and SketchUp and all that. So we're saying, okay, that's a starting point. If you do that and send a request in, that means you've actually touched the data, you created a BIM, and you can go away after that if you wanted to, although we really want the teams that are on today to do more than that. So on Tuesday, we had over 60 people that actually submitted something. Even some that did multiples, and there was about 680,000 square feet of BIMs generated, both from this department and from the space and the department. So that's part A. And the idea is that these submittals, we're going to make that one of the projects that we park in the system. And I'll explain that as we go along here. So the submittal says, okay, we need a new dental exam room. And it's going to look like, the default looks like this. And one task might be, okay, might be a team that's an expert at doing a medical planning for equipment and layout. You could take just this single room, take it out to SketchUp, take it out to Onuma, take it out to Revit, make recommendations, change the size of the room, move the equipment, or even add new equipment or delete equipment and say, well, based on today's practice, here's what a dental exam room should look like, and submit it back. We want to keep the task simple so you're not going through 300 rooms and doing this. Even if you move a single piece of equipment or add a piece of equipment like a striker, boom arm, or whatever it might be into the system and submit it back, then that would be a win of a sort, saying, okay, we had an interaction with owner data from SEPS, VA, and DoD says, here's what we know is in our database. And then the designer that says, no, this is wrong, we need to adjust it. Because this is actually what happens at VA and DoD on a continuous basis. They're continually updating their departments and standards, and It's been done in a very manual process. In fact, it's just transitioning now, but basically they're using PDFs and BIMs that are not connected in CAD files. So we're trying to move it towards, now that this data is accessible, there are ways to automate this process. So that's one task. So the part A that generates that will go to part B. Part B is design a typical space or department, take that exam room, edit it, do stuff with it. And by the way, these recommendations are just guidelines. You can take off from that and do anything you really want as far as, well, we have a better idea of how to do this, or we have other applications. We're not limiting the tools that are being used. We just want to really see the connections that can happen. For example, you might even say, well, then we want to delete all the equipment and make a recommendation for a completely new room or a completely new way of doing this. If we can demonstrate that, we'll make that part of the result that we present on the final day. So part C, design team part C, is design a project using the SEPS BIM Excel export. And I'm not sure if Atenia is on. If Atenia is on, can you raise your hand or chat in the box there? Young, I think you're tracking the chat, but we can open up the mics too if anybody wants to speak while I'm going through this. But Atenia does a lot of work with SEPS. They're SEPS experts. There's a lot of different consultants out there that work with SEPS, but Atenia is one of the leading firms out there that actually works with SEPS, and we had a discussion with them last night. And we already have a SEPS.
I have Michael Blair unmuted if you.
Oh, Michael. Okay, great.
Or
thanks, Michael.
Speak as well.
Are you there, Michael?
Yeah, definitely, Kimon.
Great.
Thanks for the opportunity. So yeah, essentially we're been interfacing with Onuma specifically around bringing that SEPS data into Atania, and as that equipment gets specified, it can then feed out into the BIM world. And
Michael, I'm sorry, I mixed the names up. I'm going so fast here. Let me clarify something to the audience. I mixed up Enova and Atania, but that's fine. Enova is the team that actually works with SEPS, and they're going to be outputting from SEPS. Atania has a database of medical equipment. So actually, Michael, it would even make more sense in the part B that I was just talking about, the medical equipment that's generic. Let me give a little bit of a prep before you jump into Atania. So the medical equipment that's coming from SEPS is generic default equipment that VA and DoD says, well, we need a dental exam chair in this room, which we saw earlier. It's not product specific, and it's very generic, and even geometry, it's very simplified, and it has no product information. Atania works with a lot of the VA and DoD projects and other healthcare organizations, and they have a huge database of actual medical equipment and other products, correct? And correct me if I'm wrong, Michael. And I'll let you explain what we've been doing together about that. So you would actually be possibly adding more information to this generic room or the hospital, or adding more information from the Atania side to the project that's being set up. Is that correct?
Okay. Yeah, so the goal is essentially, as the project matures and the life cycle goes through, that we're adding more specific detailed data along the path, and then so basically within the modeling systems, you can actually see the attributed data of the specific equipment. So instead of a generic piece of equipment from the JSN side from SEPS, you can now see the more specified model that's actually been chosen for that room. As you start to make design changes, information like that, you now have that more detailed information at your hands and at your disposal to make specific decisions from your side in real time and near real time.
Right. So that's great. So I think whatever you can participate on that, and we'd love to have Atania's name in this, because this chair that I just opened up that was in that room has very limited information. That this is intentional from the VA side. They don't want to actually specify a specific product here, but Atania has information that can be added in. And this is actually a good example of, as the teams work together, there's a lot of different experts and tools that come into play. And not everybody has to understand all the systems. So if you're a designer laying out this room and you're saying, well, I want to do a layout of an exam room, then you could just focus on that. And as Atania comes in with their data, more information can be added to this chair that says, well, here's 3 options or 10 options for a chair. That's one very simple scenario that is getting a lot of attention from these healthcare owners of how do we transition from generic, we think we need this kind of a chair in this room, to actually making a recommendation of a specific chair and then actually delivering it. So that's that part there. Okay, and part C, Enova, is Enova on?
Regarding the Enova, we have Luis Martinez and Eric Hunt. I'll go ahead and unmute them.
Okay, great. So Unova, are you on? Hello? Okay, well, I could actually explain what
So,
yeah.
Eric and Luis, if from a Innova group, are you guys on?
Let me tell them that we're trying to get.
Okay, I can't hear you very well, but I had an email back and forth with Chris Phillips from Innova last night, and we've worked with Innova before on other projects as well at VA and DoD. And I explained earlier, Innova works with SEPs; they know how to output from SEPs. So the idea that we would like how the Innova group would actually be participating in this is actually to do a sample
They
project.
won't unmute me.
Oh, I can hear you,
Oh, okay.
but your voice is very
Sorry,
weak.
so this is Chris.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh.
Hi, Chris.
Sorry. Yeah, Luis and Eric were just listening in, so I was the one that was looking to get unmuted. So I think one of the questions, and I'll let you ask me again just to make sure I hit the piece that you want.
Yeah, what we're looking for is and we already have it actually. Onuma went into SEPs and actually we created a few departments, a dental clinic and things like that, and we were going to submit this as a owner requirement into the BIMStorm Healthcare hack. But if you guys are participating, it would be great if you could set up a simple project, either a small clinic or something that has a few different department and whatever in it in SEPs, output that as a SEPs BIM Excel file from the report and submit it to us, and we would actually load it into the server as an owner requirement, and that would be used by the other teams to actually respond to from a design perspective.
Sure. Yeah. We've got several. I think we were looking at a cancer treatment center, which was kind of a small one that we've been doing. I saw you had a dental clinic before, so we had another one of those small dental clinics. I'm not sure if that's the way to go. And then we've got some PACT or PCMH model clinics, smaller clinics.
Okay.
Which are the patient-centered medical home and the patient-aligned care teams, which is what the VA are going to. So we've got some of those that we can put in. And I know one of the things is when we take the SEPs model, we do take the data that's out of that's in there in SEPs, whether it's VA or DoD, and we begin manipulating it, or exactly what you're trying to get out of this process, where we've already looked at what some of the lessons learned are, and if we know some of those guide plates are older or some of the data is older, we go ahead and start updating those and put in user numbers, or what they call U-number JSNs.
Okay, that would be
our
great.
Projects will have some of that specialized.
Right. Okay, that would be great. And if you can submit that, is it possible to get something like that by tomorrow or even today from a SEPs output, or do you have?
Absolutely.
Okay,
yeah.
that's perfect.
Yeah, we've got a couple that are ready to go, and maybe I'll send you a couple and see which one you think are the best.
Yeah, that's great. So that would essentially be you're wearing the owner's hat in many ways, that you're saying, well, here's a SEPs output, and you've already you've gone a step beyond that. You've gone into SEPs and actually adjusted based on your domain expertise of medical planning on adjusting some of the equipment in the rooms in SEPs. So the SEPs output that we're getting is going to have some customized rooms and equipment that might not be the default layout.
Right.
Okay, great. All right, great. So if you can do that, that's great. And so what we're going to do next is we're going to take that, import it into the Onuma system server, and generate the spaces and equipment. And that's where the design teams take off, basically. This is a new clinic, or whatever we call it, landed as a requirement. It's going to be available. In fact, we have a sample. Here's a sample project, actually one that we've already set up. So it would look something like this. For those that have access to the Onuma system, if you have a login already, you can actually log into the Onuma system and actually get the full functionality of this project, which is linked from here. Or you can get the link that I'm showing you here is open to anybody. This is completely public. You're not able to edit and move spaces here, but you can export to other applications. But if you had an Onuma system access, you can basically launch into this and edit it. We'll give everybody that's part of the BIMStorm team that you've logged in today, if you're going to be participating, we'll give you access to the Onuma system. We'll give you a login and instructions on how to get there. But you can just even take this and say, okay, let's take it out to SketchUp and take it out to Revit. Now, one clarification here. The layout that you're looking at here, most of the rooms looks like they're actually resolved. So they actually look like rooms with where the equipment should be. These are starter templates, as we're calling them, kind of a default location. The ones that we will be getting from Enova, there's going to be quite a few spaces, because out of the 500 that exist in SEPs, there's about 200 that have layouts like this. The other 300 have what we call a truck delivery method, which are the equipment is stacked in the corner of the room. It's the actual data from SEPs, but it's not laid out. Especially if on the Enova side, if you add a new JSN that doesn't exist in here, it's going to show up as a block, I believe. So, but we'll still have the equipment in the space. So it would be interesting to kind of see that interaction of what happens with the design teams that see a mixture of laid out spaces with equipment and other ones that don't have any layout. Okay, so we have a bunch of teams, and maybe if anybody wants to say anything from the design and construction side, I know there's quite a few of you online right now, and just put in the chat box, but I'm going to kind of introduce the scenario for that. And I'm welcome to recommendations and different approaches to this, but you would take the program requirements that we just described. It's going to look something like this. And your task is to do something with it, even if it's minimal, even if it's saying, well, we think this layout, these rooms should be over here. They're going to be stacked together, so you're going to be moving them around or moving them to a different floor, or even focusing in on a single room. We're not looking for resolution of the whole design. We just want to see some examples of interaction that we can demonstrate in the hack. And we're kind of redefining in many ways what the hack is all about. The hack typically, hackathon a lot of times focuses more on the programming, the development side of software. But we're saying on the design side, as decisions are being made and data is being added, so when you move a piece of equipment, like from SEPs, if you add another piece of equipment, or if the designer grabs this and moves a space around and moves equipment around, the data in the background is changing, and the development team that has access to the data will actually see changes to that database. So if a new room appears, it'll show up in their database. So if they create some kind of a mobile device, or they have a mobile device that does reporting or whatever, or asset management, they will see that data live. That's the intent here, is that it's not just about teams developing software, it's actually teams that are making decisions that feed into the data that get updated. So we're trying to show the full view of that. So design teams, does anybody want to say anything or have any questions about this design and construction process? So we're looking for things like making decisions about design. We're looking for things like possibly cost estimating. We're looking for things of spotting potential problems that you as a medical planner can see coming out of SEPs, because SEPs is not perfect. Like Nova mentioned earlier, is that there are changes that happen that are not updated, and there's a domain expertise and says, okay, we know this exam room that comes out of SEPs is using an old piece of equipment, so we swap it out when a project happens. So we want the design teams to be able to interact with these models. And one significant thing on the SEPs to BIM process, because we identified in the SEPs output, there are what called GUIDs, a unique ID to every single space, every single piece of equipment that is unique to that one chair in that one room on that one floor in that one project. That can be tracked with applications. The SEPs output that typically is being used today, or in the past even, that VA and DoD use, is they export what are called PFD, Program for Design and Project Room Content, Excel files and PDFs that most architects use as a starting point to load the 1 million square foot hospital and load all the equipment in. But those outputs from SEPs do not have GUIDs, so you can't track the individual equipment. The fact that we're focusing on the SEPs data, the GUIDs, we can do things like what was explained earlier with Atania, where they can swap out and say, well, here's a better piece of equipment, and we can still say that that's involved with that GUID. So I'm getting a little technical here, but in the background, what I'm making the point here is that there's a lot of stuff that's happening to support for example, checking the delta between the design and what happens as the project progresses. So anybody have any questions on that part? And we can open up the mics here if you raise your hand and say you have a question or comment from the design, construction, cost estimating side.
Kimon.
Yes.
It's Ryan.
Hey, Ryan.
So this is Ryan Gear from SketchUp, and I'm coming with a few different things to share. One of them will be an actual clinic program that should be getting delivered to me today, which would be great for one of the teams to look at. It's a program proposed by a local children's hospital, and that would be one of the real design scenarios that we could put into play in this whole BIMStorm.
Okay, great. We'll have to work together to figure out how to get that into SEPs. So we'll work on that together. Ryan and I are going to be actually physically there at UCLA, like I mentioned, and Ryan's been helping. Ryan and Gary Technologies and others have been helping from his team to set this all up for weeks or months now, actually. And in fact, we're considering that one to be one of the first hacks because we open sourced the plugin from Onuma, Trimble, SketchUp. Gary Technologies took that and actually developed the SketchUp plugin. So within a week, we had a first version of it, and then now there's actually a connection between SketchUp and all of this data. So what I'm showing on screen actually is the same project that we were looking at earlier, but this is actually in the Onuma iPad app. But if you open this up in SketchUp, you would see the exact same thing. So this is the clinic with a chair with a generic information in it. And this iPad app is free too. This is Onuma iPad app. You can actually, we'll point everybody to this so you can actually download these files, and you can even download the projects as they start getting loaded in. So the Innova, I'm sorry, I keep getting the names mixed up here, but the Innova SEPs output, when loaded into the Onuma system, will be immediately accessible on the iPad, and we'll be able to look into a room like this, and the new piece of equipment that Michael added in SEPs would actually show up as a block in the room. So here's a new piece of equipment or other information. So the idea is to have all this stuff kind of happening real time as a project progresses. Anybody else from the design construction side that has a question or comment? I'm talking kind of fast here, so sorry about that, but I want to kind of get through all this. So I'm going to just jump back just for a second here because we've been talking about an actual program for an actual project that comes out of SEPs that Innova is going to be setting up. At the same time, we have what are the typical spaces and departments. These are generic kind of, here are the typical rooms that would look like this, and the typical department that would be, here's one of each room in a dental clinic. VA and DoD spent a lot of resources keeping these up to date. Every year they hire consultants to come in to do what's called a department update. We need to update the standards that VA is publishing out about operating a surgical suite. And they spend about 6 months to a year going through that process of interacting with the clinical staff, working with designers and medical planners, capturing those requirements, documenting them, putting them in a PDF file, extracting that data, putting it into what's called the SEPs criteria. So there's a lot of very valuable knowledge and information that's being processed in those tasks and projects. And part of our work with VA was to figure out how do we streamline that and use more of this BIM-centric process and data-centric process to do that. So it's a different kind of project in many ways. It's not a project that they're actually going to construct, but it's a project to update their latest standards. And this is where the medical equipment, if a new piece of equipment is available, then they would have that discussion during that. So if, for example, if this chair is no longer, or this boom arm, let's use this boom arm as an example, because this actually came up. We had some comments from a VA medical planner that says, hey, I see this 3D boom arm and this lighting fixture, and it's not an LED fixture. We no longer use that kind of fixture anymore. And the idea is and it's actually in the SEPs database, in the 1691 database, as a cut sheet that looks like a round fixture. So we're saying, okay, this is, because it's in 3D now, they're actually able to react to it and say, that's the wrong piece. Therefore, how do we maintain and update that? We want to demonstrate that this process should be much more smoother and much more efficient, but how does one react to, how do we update our standards? So if a team can actually focus in on that, and Innova, I think you can, and Etania actually, and Innova can actually, that would be an interesting scenario of let's update an exam room with the latest information, latest standard requirements. So it's a little bit different than a project, but it's one of the other tracks that we're talking about. Okay, so interact, and we have to change this name here. We called it program team, but we called it the development team, software development team. So everything that's happening up here, the software development team is going to be seeing the data coming out with it. So even if you know nothing about software development, the decisions that you're making in BIM is going to be published out to the development team and made accessible. So having some kind of an interaction, we're hoping that we find teams that have some kind of application or that can build an app or already have a fully developed application that can connect to this data through web services, and having that even simple interaction would be great. So this is going to evolve, I think, as we work our way through the hackathon. Any questions about that section? Okay. Then we have what's called E-Link to Facility Operations. We actually have this project that we've set up already. All of this data actually has information associated with it. So for example, if I go to the data here, there's barcodes associated with every piece of equipment. So if we had a barcode like this, and we're going to print a few of these out, if we scan the barcode, it would jump directly to this piece of equipment and this room. So we're basically linking barcoding and tags to specific locations in the model, and we're going to try and bring that in. We're using our system, the NUMA system in this case, but if there are other applications that can also link into it, that would be great. And we've also set up a work order request interface, a web interface that can send work orders for a specific room in this building. So we're trying to simulate how does this go into operations and maintenance. So as this life cycle progresses, the project is delivered. Now we're actually maintaining this facility. We can open up an iPhone, take a picture of it, submit it. It gets attached to the database. It gets output as Kobe. All that kind of stuff can be happening in the background. We already have that set up. So we want to just declare that that's happening as part of the hackathon, and then get people to interact with it and maybe even have other applications link into that. So that's what this section is. And section F is really your choice when you're not limited to what we've listed here. If you have another great idea, in fact, if anybody wants to speak up now and has something that they think like Ryan mentioned, something different, we'd like to hear about that right now.
Okay, hey, come on, it's Fineth.
Yeah. Hey, Fineth.
Hi, how you doing?
Good, how are you doing?
So, I'm good. Yeah, this is Fineth Jernigan with Design Atlantic. Come on, I'm as usual. I'm not following anybody's directions here, so
that's good.
Yeah, well, so I had 2 or 3 issues or questions. I've pulled the Excel files out of the SEP to BIM system, so I think the place where it's actually maintaining the BIMs, and and I can actually drop those into a studio in the Enuma system and do what I might want to do with them. But I guess the first question is just a mechanical thing. You're going to create a special studio for this, so that
right. We have 2 studios. We have one called VA SEPs, another one called SEPs itself, and we'll point you to it. Those 2 studios are important to use because they have the SEPs objects and everything already set up. Okay. So the Excel file that you're mentioning, which Excel file is it? Is it from SEPs?
Well,
or?
I pulled the 3 that are available from SEPs. I'm not sure which one's going to be, whether it's the Kobe, the equipment, or the rooms yet, because what I'm going to do is actually I've got a Votech school that's got a large dental training component, so I was going to take the SEPs data and populate the dental training school, basically.
Right.
As a starting point. So it's an existing project that I can use to sort of merge with the SEPs information.
Right.
And so, from my end, it goes, that's easy once I know where you want me to, do the work, basically.
Right.
The next step is, though, what happens when I get something complete and you need to put it back into the SEPs to BIM system?
Right.
How do I go about that?
Right. So let me ask you a question. Did you get the Excel from one of these links here?
Yes.
Okay.
I actually have taken all 3 of them because I wanted to see what they include.
Right. Okay. So this one here is an actual project with specific rooms already, a decision being made on them. So if you export this, I can't remember if the Excel exports. These are lists of rooms and list of equipment. I can't remember if the GUIDs. I think they do. In fact, we could try it real quick. But
well, come on. I went up. I think where it says select a BIM template. So the second green tab. No, go well. Yeah, there up towards the top.
Here. Okay.
There.
Yeah. Okay.
I think what I did there. I'm trying to think whether it's there, but basically what I did is I selected the dental clinic, dental service 222. So it has everything populated. It's just not refined.
Right. Okay, so what you're going to get is a subset of SEPs that's specific to that dental clinic, which was created. So you could do that, or you could actually even go and create your own recipe of rooms. You don't have to necessarily use it, because this is basically a specific layout of a specific clinic with specific equipment coming out. And what Innova was mentioning earlier, from SEPs, they actually adjust equipment before it even makes its way into this. So they say, okay, we're working with clinical staff, they want another piece of equipment. Before it even hits this, it actually gets adjusted in SEPs. Now, you don't have to use that, and I think what you're suggesting is you want to create your own recipe of things. So,
well, what's happening here is I've got an existing Votech school.
right.
It's got a dental clinic or a dental training component.
Right.
I figured take all the bits and pieces that would be in a full dental service, and I'm going to basically test fit them into existing spaces, just like you do a renovation.
Right. Okay. Well, what I would suggest, even if you take the sample one, because this is really a sample, it's one clinic it's already a project essentially. We're going to be tracking this project. If you want to create one from scratch, and maybe we should do this offline because I could kind of walk you through it, but there's several ways of doing that. One is to go and just request a brand new department. So I want a new dental clinic.
Right.
Another way
and I think that's where I got it. That's where I got the information.
Yeah, another one is actually creating your own recipe of rooms. So you can go and grab the list, and there's a full list of 200 or 500 rooms. You can say, well, I want one of these and one of these and one of these. Put commas in it, and we'll create a custom one just for you. That would actually
that just seemed like too much work.
Well, that's fine too. You can actually take the one that's here, because you have access to the Onuma system, duplicate it, and start a new one. What I would yeah, well, we could talk offline, because I know that you're very familiar with all these tools, so we can get into very specifics. I don't want to get stuck on this right now.
Right. The only issue, and we can talk about it later, is the return flow back into the system. I mean,
right. And that's why it's
going out and doing stuff in the Onuma system. That's not a big deal, but the return is the issue.
Right, and that's why it's important that we know where the trigger is, the starting point. And so either what Innova was mentioning, of coming out of SEPs with a very specific owner requirement, or building it with a recipe from here, or duplicating one that already exists and saying I'm going to create my own. Those are all valid, but we just need to walk through to make sure that when it comes back, we can actually track that. So let's talk offline. That's actually one.
Okay.
We're getting into more specifics about a specific workflow here, but we welcome that. That's actually great that you come up with an idea like that. And, all right. Any other questions on this part? I want to get to the.
I see Mark Stands from Building Catalyst had his hands up. So Mark,
okay.
I'll go ahead and unmute you if there's anything that you want to say.
Okay, great. Mark, Building Catalyst. No questions.
I guess we can get back to him later.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Oh, there we go.
Hey, Mark.
Yes, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you, yeah.
Okay, great. So, yeah, Kimon, we met in D.C. at the Building Innovation Conference briefly. Oh, there you go, right there. And then Fineth, I think maybe even the project that Fineth was referring to several months ago, we did a little exercise. Since then, Fineth, what we've done is actually recorded a number of schools and also been working with a national school K-12 planner to get our ontology and our standards corroborated, and so we could have a discussion about that at some time as well. But specific to SEPs, my question is, yesterday I got in and created some BIMs within the departments, and my question is, do you have like department composites, maybe within the VA, or where actual whole departments have been created, and because within Catalyst we can easily create whole building and department templates, and then start to model and then compare at a high level where we're modeling the overall program the scope of the project and then the cost of the project, but then tracking, as the programming design continues in more detail, in a collaborative sense. So my question is, do you have access through SEPs to a series of composite departments? All the departments right now are just, one-to-one, just...
Right. Actually, that's a good question, and actually addresses even part of his finance question here. So if you go to the department aggregator here, what you're really seeing when you pull down here is what VA calls all of their departments. And if you send a request in for dental service, for example, and put your email here and everything, what it sends you, and this is important, this is very critical from a project perspective, it sends you one room of each type that's ever used in a dental department. This is not a project yet. This is kind of a kit of parts of all the spaces and equipment that are officially inside SEPs for what's called the dental department. So if you took this as is and you made a project out of it, yeah, you could go in and delete and duplicate, but this is why it's important what Innova was talking about earlier. Coming out of SEPs, what happens, this is not a project, but as soon as you hit the project phase of SEPs, it says we're designing a dental clinic and a admin area and whatever, and we have this many patients. You put all this criteria in SEPs and it spits out and says, well, you need 3 of these and 4 of these and 5 of these. So, for example, in this dental quote-unquote department, there's only one exam room of that type, DNTG1, but you might end up with 3 of them. So you can manually create your own formula of I need one of these and one of these and one of these. If you use the department update, you're not going to get a real project. You're going to get a department of one of each type. That's a very important point. So you can go in and manually and say, okay, we're going to design a 1 million square foot hospital. I'm going to duplicate a patient bedroom, 300 patient bedrooms, but you're only going to get 1 patient bedroom or 1 dental exam room. The projects that I mentioned earlier, when output from SEP says we have an actual project that Innova goes into SEPs and sets up for us by tomorrow, we're going to get that. If you submit that, then you will actually get, I think what you're calling department composites are combinations of departments and even the actual program for that department. If you have 3 exam rooms and you have 4 offices and you have this, that'll come in as an Excel file that if we upload it here, it'll generate that BIM for you. So
will you have like a set of like test projects of these composites of departments and composites of departments making up a whole facility, medical facility, that we could maybe do some testing collaboration?
yes.
With take it out of SEPs and right into a robust cost modeling.
Yes, definitely. That would be great if you can show that. In fact, either you get the BIMs out, we'll have those set up in our system, so you can do that whole export. So once we do that export of that project, it'll actually give you the spaces and equipment for that project, not just a generic department. And we also...
Our Catalyst doesn't model the equipment cost. It just models the whole building.
Okay, that's perfect. So if you can do that and you can say, well, based on a laboratory of this size or exam room of this size and the cost, whatever you can do with that, that would be great. We'll have and that can come out in many different formats. So let's work together on that, and then we could guide you on what that could be, because I think this is a very important part. If you can get Catalyst in here, that'd be great.
Yeah, and Mark Dietrich, we're doing a pilot project on one of the current Revit, test buildings to do that, interoperability as well. So
right, and the important part there is if you can keep the GUIDs tracked. If you can add a column that has a GUID that comes out of SEPs for that space or for that department, then we can do. If you can't, that's okay too as well. But if you can, that would be a bonus, because we can say, okay, we're actually tracking the original space for this 1 exam room on this 3rd floor that's now inside this cost or whatever. All right.
We have to do it with Catalyst. We have to do it at the department level.
Yeah, that's fine too. If you can track the department like that, yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, good.
All right, we'll work on that.
Thank you.
Yeah, great. I'm going to run a little bit faster here because I want to get to the top of the hour and just kind of wrap this up. But so that's the design section, and like I said, we have your own choice thing here. The program side, or the developer side, if I go to the developers, we're calling on developers to actually use this data. So connect to SEPs. We have the web service already set up. We have the RESTful web service from the project. So if you click on RESTful web service, then it's linked at the bottom of the page too. We have APIs and whatever. This is the actual data from that project I was showing you. So if you are a developer and you hit on this and say, give me a list of, this is your question actually from Catalyst, get a list of departments, you would actually get, it's basically a RESTful request to get the actual data from that, that project. Okay, so let's run through quickly here on the developers again. So the developers would have access to that. They have access to the web services from the master tables, the kit of parts of what kind of equipment do we have, what kind of data do we have for that. Creating a report with SEPs from the project data. We want whatever kind of reports you can generate from this, and then maybe this is the Catalyst thing as well too. We have data, we're going to do a department cost estimate, whatever, something like that. Or create new applications, or your choice. Let's see. Then we want to see the result really, the goal really here is as the design teams work and as the developers work, if we can come up with new ways of connecting things, whatever, even if it's a very simple one. We say, well, we saw this list of departments with square footage, now here's a cost of that facility based on departments. That would be a win right there. If we can say, okay, we had a RESTful web service that lists out the spaces and equipment, and we have Atania data coming in that has an actual piece of equipment, even if it's one equipment for that matter, or even if it's 10 or whatever, then it would be great. If the design work is happening and we have the BIMs in Revit or SketchUp, and in SketchUp, Ryan, you come in and you bring a very specific piece of equipment that says, well, here, instead of this generic boom arm, here's a striker or a boom arm or ASA alloy door, then that would be a win as well. We want to be able to keep on publishing this back to the database, and in many cases it could be automatic. In other cases it might need some manual export import, and that's okay as well, just as long as we can show the results. We started to list tools that we're going to be using. We're setting up a public Dropbox for the team so we can drop things in and out. This list, we want it to grow. We kind of just put in the initial things that we've identified just today, but we want this list to grow with different applications. So if you have one that you think is going to fit into this scenario, and if you can send me an information, we'll add this to here. And we have technologies like the RESTful web services and the SOAP web services coming from the 1691 here as well. Let's see. Technically,
just one point of clarification there. So where you see the Dropbox, so everyone who's participating, when you hear us mention, and then you'll be submitting this back to us. So that's the mechanism that we'll be using for you to be able to send it back to us. Right. Dropbox.
Right. And it would be great if each team that does their work, if you take some screenshots along the way and even set it up in a PowerPoint or something, so we can have the live data as well. But it would be great if you can kind of have some kind of an image that we can put up on screen and see it said team A and B did this, and they got a cost estimate out, or they changed the equipment, whatever it might be. We want to be able to do it on the fly, because on the final day we basically have to submit to the hackathon and say, here are the results, and show the results as well. Okay, so there's links to the applications here. Watching the BIMStorm, we are going to be setting up a go-to session for each day. We're just going to run it all day. It's not going to be a presentation. It's going to be available, and on the fly we could use it if teams want to assemble, or if we want to present something out. It's not, there are going to be gaps in the day. We're not going to be broadcasting the full day, but we'll probably say, okay, at 2 o'clock on Saturday we'll be doing a presentation or a meeting or whatever. So everybody that's on the call today will get access to that. We talked about that. We want to stress that this is being watched. First of all, it's being watched by other owners. So that's the goal here, is if we can do some interesting things, then we can get attention from VA, DOD, and other healthcare organizations or owners and present that back to them. They're already interested in what's going on here. So we're planning on a follow-on webinar after the hackathon even to show the results. So everybody that does participate, you will get recognized there. And if you do something interesting too, we can even set it up as part of the presentation. SketchUp and Onuma are throwing in sponsored software awards. So if we see some outstanding things happening, we're going to be giving out software as awards. That's it. And it lists the owner's data. So we have owner's data coming from DOD, VA that's already public. We have SPAWAR that's set up this web services for that. We have max.gov where the data is hosted. And the healthcare BIMStorm teams, if you're declaring that you're going to be part of this BIMStorm, we're going to put your name up here with your logo, your organization, and a little blurb of what you're doing. And we could even put a link. If you create a blog or a result, a presentation, whatever, we could even put a link here and go back to that. So if you don't see your logo up here and you want to be involved with this, let us know how you're going to, based on today's presentation, what you're going to do, and we'll update this. That's it. Let's leave the last 5 minutes for questions or comments. So we're going to start.
Oh, we had one question from Robert. Yeah. Robert Yu.
Okay, Robert. Robert, you're on.
Hi, Kim. This is Robert Yu from Auditas. Great presentation. This is the first time that I'll be involved potentially be involved in the hackathon. Can you give me an idea for the solutions be judged? Is there like a panel of judges, and what are the prizes for participation?
Well, this is also our first time involved with a hackathon, so we're kind of doing it based on what we hear is happening there. It seems kind of loose about how they've actually set this up. They kind of ad hoc, the teams are assembling and everything, but from what we understand, and we talked quite a bit with the organization, and Ryan has been involved with this quite a bit as well too. BIMStorm is one of the teams that's involved with the hackathon. When we go to UCLA, there's going to be other teams involved, some of them doing their own thing, and we're hoping to interact with them as well. On Sunday, all the teams will be presenting, so I think within the hackathon, there's recognition of what the results have been. BIMStorm is a subset of the hackathon, so we're actually the awards that I mentioned earlier are BIMStorm specific awards. We're looking for creativity, some solution that we've never seen before. We're looking for connectivity as well. In other words, we don't want you to be isolated and not connect to what we're kind of setting up a scenario. First of all, that the SEPs to BIM data from this owner is available. What can we do with it, and how much can you connect to what else is happening here? So we're looking for that. We're looking for collaboration, and we want to keep it simple as well. Like I said, it's a weekend and it's a last minute, so we realize that everybody cannot be online the whole time. So whatever you can do, even if it's simple, it would be great. We are going to recognize everybody that does something and submits something by making it part of the presentation. But for teams that do something innovative, we're going to basically judge that and give the software award, essentially a SketchUp Pro, multiple licenses, I believe, right, Ryan? Onuma Editor and Onuma One Year Studio is a five user studio. So we're going to be combining these awards and basically listing the teams that would be getting that. And then the presentations, more than the awards, I think the more interesting thing for all of us is Onuma. We've had multiple projects and ongoing consulting that we've been doing with these owners, and they're interested in this. And in fact, we've had very specific interest to how can we actually create new applications for healthcare organizations. If we can show those results and make a series of webinars or even future presentations, we think that that's going to be the more interesting thing if we can set that up together. So whoever is involved in the BIMStorm Hackathon can help guide that as well too. Does that answer your question? And I know that Auditas is doing some really amazing things, so anything that we can figure out that can show that value of Auditas fitting into this. And we certainly want to promote the different tools that are being used. It's whoever's using whatever application and whatever connections they make, we want to actually list them right here. So if Auditas gets involved, we want to put your logo here and list what you're going to do. Okay, I think we're toward the end of the meeting here. We've just to kind of read down the list here. We had Balfour Beatty in the past has been very involved with BIMStorm, so we look forward to if you guys can actually participate in this in some way. Gil Bain, I see, was logged in, HDR, HFR, Istanbul University, Jacobs. So yeah, it really, if you can declare what you're going to do, and we need to know that this today pretty much because it's starting tomorrow, but even if you jump in tomorrow and let us know what's going on, how you think you can fit into this, and watch this website, seps2bim.org. We're going to be updating this page, the events page. So if you wonder what's the next thing to do or whatever we talked about, it's going to be all listed here. Okay. With that, I think we're at the top of the hour. So I thank everybody for joining us. And if If you can't participate for whatever reason, that's fine as well. We're going to do things in the future, but we really look forward to whatever kind of participation you can be involved with. We're going to be tweeting. We're going to use the hashtag BIMStorm and also SEPS to BIM, and tweeting the results of this out as it happens as well too. Okay, great. So thank you everybody, and we look forward to seeing you online.